The November wind cut through Detroit's downtown streets like a blade, carrying the metallic scent of the nearby auto plants and the promise of an early winter. Maya Rodriguez pulled her threadbare coat tighter around her shoulders as she hurried down Corktown's cracked sidewalks, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The grocery bag in her arms felt heavier with each step, a week's worth of generic cereal, canned beans, and dialed bread that would have to stretch until her next paycheck from the diner. At 28, Maya had the kind of exhaustion that settled deep in her bones, working double shifts at Tommy's all-night diner, while raising her 6-year-old daughter Emma alone had aged her beyond her years. The studio apartment they called home was just 6 blocks away, but tonight those blocks felt endless. As she turned the corner onto Michigan Avenue, a figure huddled against the brick wall of an abandoned storefront caught her attention. An elderly woman sat on a piece of cardboard, her silver hair tangled and dirty, wearing clothes that looked like they hadn't been changed in weeks. Her hands, gnarled with arthritis, clutched a torn plastic bag containing what appeared to be her only possessions. Maya's steps slowed. She'd walked this route countless times, passing homeless individuals who dotted the city's landscape like forgotten memories. Tonight was different, though. Maybe it was the way the woman's shoulders shook with each gust of wind, or how she seemed to shrink into herself as people hurried past without a glance. "Excuse me," Maya found herself saying, stopping in front of the woman. "Are you okay?" The woman looked up with startling blue eyes that held a mixture of surprise and wariness. "Just trying to stay warm, honey. Don't mind me," Maya glanced at the temperature display on the bank across the street, 31 degrees Fahrenheit and dropping. She thought about Emma, probably already asleep in their small apartment, wrapped in the colorful quilt Maya's grandmother had made. Then she looked at this stranger, shivering in the November night with nothing but cardboard beneath her. "Wait here," Maya said, setting down her grocery bag. "I'll be right back." She jogged the remaining blocks to her apartment building, a converted warehouse that had seen better days. The lobby smelled of industrial disinfectant and old carpet. She climbed 3 flights of stairs, keys jingling as she unlocked apartment 3B. Emma was indeed asleep, curled up on their pull-out couch with her stuffed elephant. "Mr. Peanuts." Maya moved quietly to the small closet that held their meager possessions. She pulled out the woolen blanket she'd bought last winter at a thrift store, their only extra blanket. The one she used when Emma kicked off her covers during nightmares? For a moment, Maya hesitated. Winter was coming, and they couldn't afford to replace anything. Her last heating bill had been a choice between warmth and groceries. She'd chosen groceries. But the image of the elderly woman shaking hands wouldn't leave her mind. She grabbed the blanket and headed back into the night. The woman was still there, now visibly shivering. Maya approached and gently placed the blanket around her shoulders. "Here," Maya said softly. "This should help keep you warm." The woman's eyes widened as she pulled the blanket tighter. "Oh, sweetheart, I can't take this. You need it?" "It's others," Maya lied smoothly. "Are you hungry? There's a 24-hour diner down the street. I work there. I could get you something hot." The woman studied Maya's face carefully, as if memorizing every detail. "What's your name, child, Maya?" "Maya Rodriguez." "I'm Eleanor," the woman said after a pause. "Eleanor, right. And you, Maya Rodriguez, might just be an angel." Maya laughed, a sound that held more sadness than humor. "Trust me, I'm no angel. Just someone who knows what it's like to be cold." She helped Eleanor to her feet and guided her toward Tommy's all-night diner. The neon sign flickered intermittently, casting the sidewalk in alternating pink and darkness. Through the windows, Maya could see the familiar scene. Late shift workers, grabbing coffee, a few insomniacs, nursing pie, in conversation. Kay and Charlie, the night cook, visible through the pass-through window. As they walked, Eleanor asked, "Do you have family, Maya?" "Daughter, Emma. She's 6. Maya's voice softened. "She's everything to me. Must be hard, raising a child alone in times like these." Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Hard didn't begin to cover it. The constant worry about rent, about Emma's school supplies, about what would happen if Maya got sick and couldn't work. The way Emma sometimes asked why they couldn't afford the toys other kids had, and how Maya's heart broke a little more each time she had to explain. They reached the diner, and Maya pushed open the glass door, setting off the familiar chime that announced customers. The warmth hit them immediately, along with the smell of coffee and bacon grease that had soaked into every surface over the decades. "Maya?" Charlie called from behind the counter. "What are you doing here? You don't work?" "Tonight." "Just bringing a friend in from the cold," Maya replied, guiding Eleanor to a booth by the window. She ordered Eleanor a cup of coffee, a bowl of chicken soup, and a grilled cheese sandwich more than Maya could afford, but she couldn't bear. The thought of that woman going back out into the cold night hungry. As Eleanor ate, they talked. Maya learned that Eleanor had been on the streets for what she claimed was several months, that she had no family to speak of, and that she'd once lived very differently. There was something about Eleanor's way of speaking, her vocabulary and mannerisms that seemed at odds with her appearance, but Maya didn't pry. "You're very kind," Eleanor said, wrapping her hands around the warm coffee mug. "Not many people would have stopped. My grandmother always said that we're all just one bad day away from needing someone's kindness," Maya replied. "I guess I've had enough bad days to remember that." When Eleanor finished eating, Maya walked her back to a nearby homeless shelter that she knew stayed open late. The night supervisor, a woman named Janet, who'd known Maya since her own family had briefly stayed there years ago, welcomed Eleanor inside. "Thank you," Eleanor said, gripping Maya's hand with surprising strength. "I won't forget this." As Maya walked home through the empty streets, she realized she felt lighter somehow. Despite the fact that she'd just given away their only spare blanket and spent money they didn't have, sometimes, she thought, doing the right thing was its own reward. She had no idea that Eleanor Wright was actually Eleanor Whitfield, CEO and founder of Whitfield Industries, one of the largest philanthropic foundations in the country, worth over $3 billion. She had no idea that Eleanor had been conducting an experiment, testing whether genuine kindness still existed in a world that often seemed to have forgotten its value, and she certainly had no idea that her simple act of compassion was about to change her life forever. 3 days later, Maya was knee-deep in the breakfast rush at Tommy's Diner when her life began to shift in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. The morning crowd was particularly demanding, construction workers grabbing coffee before heading 2 job sites, office workers running late for downtown meetings, and the usual cast of regulars who treated the diner like their personal breakfast club. "Order up," Charlie shouted from the kitchen, sliding to plates of eggs over easy across the pass-through. Maya grabbed them, balancing 3 other plates on her arms with the skill that came from years of practice. The bell above the door chimed, and Maya glanced up to see a man in an expensive-looking navy suit scanning the restaurant. He was probably in his 50s, with silver at his temples, and the kind of posture that suggested he was used to being in charge. Definitely not their usual customer. "I'll be right with you," Maya called over her shoulder as she delivered the breakfast plates. "To table 6. When she returned to the front, the man was still waiting patiently, checking his phone. "Good morning," Maya said, grabbing a coffee pot. "Booth or counter?" "Actually, I'm looking for Maya Rodriguez," the man said with a warm smile. "Be you?" Maya felt her stomach tighten. In her experience, when well-dressed strangers asked for her by name, it usually meant trouble. Unpaid bills, legal issues, or problems with Emma's school. "Depends who's asking," she replied cautiously. The man extended his hand. "I'm James Patterson, senior partner at Patterson, Klein and Associates. I represent a client who wishes to remain anonymous for now. Is there somewhere we could speak privately?" Maya glanced around the busy diner. "My break isn't for another hour. Can't this wait?" "Actually, it's rather urgent," James said, lowering his voice.
Oh.
"It concerns a significant financial matter that could benefit you greatly." Rosie, the day shift manager, appeared at Maya's elbow. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd been running the front of house since before Maya was born. "Everything okay here?" Rosie asked, eyeing James with suspicion. "This gentleman needs to speak with me," Maya said. "He says it's urgent." Rosie looked between them, then checked her watch. "Take 15 minutes, I'll cover your tables." Led James to the small employee break room behind the kitchen. A cramped space with a folding table, 2 mismatched chairs, and a refrigerator that hummed loudly. The fluorescent light flickered intermittently, casting everything in an unstable glow. "Ms. Rodriguez," James began, setting his briefcase on the table. "What I'm about to tell you may sound unbelievable, but I assure you it's entirely legitimate." He opened the briefcase and withdrew a thick manila folder.
"But you recently showed kindness to a woman named Eleanor Wright. Do you remember?"
Maya's hand went instinctively to her throat. "Is she okay? Did something happen to her?" "She's perfectly fine," James assured her quickly. "In fact, she was quite impressed by your generosity. So impressed that she's decided to make a substantial gesture of appreciation." He slid a document across the table. Maya stared at it, the legal language swimming before her eyes. The only numbers she could focus on were in a box at the bottom of the page. $50,000, I don't understand," Maya whispered. "Ms. Wright has established a grant in your name," James explained. $50,000 to be used for your education. Your daughter's education, housing improvements, or any other purpose that would improve your family's quality of life. Maya's first instinct was to push the paper away. There has to be a mistake. I didn't do anything special. I just gave her a blanket and bought her some food. According to Ms. Wright, that's exactly why you deserve this, James said gently. She was very specific about that point, but why? Maya's voice cracked. People do nice things every day. This is too much. James leaned forward. Miss Rodriguez, I've been practicing law for 25 years and I've seen a lot of people receive unexpected windfalls. Your reaction tells me everything I need to know about why you were chosen for this gift. Maya stared at the document again. $50,000. It was more money than she'd ever seen in one place. More than she made in 2 years at the diner. With that money, she could move Emma to a better neighborhood. Even start the nursing program she'd always dreamed of, but never thought she could afford. What's the catch? She asked.
Oh, what is she? Nothing.
There are no strings attached. No publicity requirements. No obligations. The only condition is that you use the money wisely. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. I can't accept this. It's too much. Ms. Rodriguez, James said softly, when someone offers you a gift like this, saying no isn't just rejecting their generosity, it's rejecting the possibility of a better future for your daughter. Is that really what you want to do? The question hit her like a physical blow. Emma, who deserved so much more than their cramped studio apartment and secondhand everything. Emma, who'd never complained but always asked careful questions about money that showed she understood more about their situation than any 6-year-old should have to. Can I think about it? Maya asked. James smiled. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Maya, may I call you Maya? I want you to know that this is real. Ms. Wright is a very successful businesswoman, and when she makes a decision like this, she follows through. He stood and handed her his business card. Call me when you're ready. Congratulations. Whatever you did that night, it came from your heart. It's rarer than you might think. After James left, Maya sat alone in the break room, staring at the document. The legal language was dense and confusing, but those numbers at the bottom were crystal clear. She thought about Eleanor, the frail woman she'd wrapped in her only extra blanket. How could a homeless woman arrange for a gift like this, Maya? Rosie called from the dining room. Your break's over, honey? Maya folded the papers carefully and slipped them into her apron pocket. She would finish her shift, pick up Emma from school, and then figure out what this all meant. But as she returned to taking orders and refilling coffee cups, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Maya called the number on James Patterson's business card. It rang twice before his voice answered. Mr. Patterson, this is Maya Rodriguez. I've made my decision. I'm listening, he said. I accept, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. And please, please tell Ms. Wright thank you. Tell her that she just changed our lives. I will, James promised. She already knows. 2 weeks after accepting the mysterious gift, Maya stood in the lobby of the Whitfield Foundation building in downtown Detroit, feeling completely out of place. The soaring glass atrium, polished marble floors, and modern art installations spoke. Of wealth beyond her imagination, she tugged at the hem of her best dress, a simple navy blue outfit she'd bought secondhand for job interviews, checked her reflection in one of the gleaming surfaces. The phone call had come that morning. From James Patterson. Eleanor Wright wanted to meet with her personally to discuss her plans for the grant money. Maya had arranged for her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to watch Emma after school, and taken her first sick day in over a year from the diner. Ms. Rodriguez? A young woman in a crisp, white blouse approached her. I'm Sarah, Ms. Wright's assistant. She's ready to see you now. They rode the elevator to the 40th floor in silence. Maya watched the city shrink below them through the glass walls, the urban landscape stretching out toward the Detroit River. She'd lived in Detroit her entire life, but had never seen it. From this height, the elevator opened into an elegant reception area, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Sarah led her down a hallway lined with photographs, what appeared to be images from charitable projects around the world. Schools being built, clean water systems being installed, medical clinics opening their doors. Right through here, Sarah said, opening a heavy wooden door. Maya stepped into an office that was larger than her entire apartment. Behind an imposing mahogany desk sat Eleanor Wright, but this Eleanor was transformed. Gone were the dirty clothes and tangled hair. Instead, she wore an expertly tailored charcoal suit, her silver hair styled in an elegant bob. The woman who'd shivered on the Detroit streets 2 weeks ago now radiated authority and confidence. Hello, Maya, Eleanor said, rising from her chair with a warm smile. Please, sit down. Maya remained frozen in the doorway, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. I don't understand. You were ... homeless, cold, hungry. Eleanor gestured to the chair across from her desk. I was all of those things that night, by choice. Maya slowly moved to the chair, her legs feeling unsteady. By choice. Eleanor walked around the desk and sat in the chair next to Maya's. Instead of returning to her imposing seat behind the desk, Maya, I need to tell you who I really am. My name is Eleanor Whitfield, and I'm the founder and CEO of this foundation. For the past 15 years, we've given away over $1 billion. 2 charitable causes around the world. $1 billion ... double quotes. Maya couldn't finish the sentence. What you witnessed that night, Eleanor continued, was an experiment of sorts. It's not a scientific study, nothing that would be published or shared publicly. More of a personal test I've been conducting for years. Maya found her voice. A test? I wanted to know if genuine kindness still existed in our world, Eleanor explained. Not the kind of charity that comes with tax benefits or public recognition, but real compassion from someone who has little to give. So, once a month for the past 2 years, I've spent a night on the streets of different cities, dressed as you saw me, with nothing but what I could carry. Maya felt a surge of anger. So this was all fake? You were just playing dress up as a poor person? Eleanor said firmly. The cold was real. The hunger was real. The way people looked through me, as if I didn't exist, that was painfully real. And your kindness, Maya, that was the most real thing of all. Maya stood up abruptly. I need to go. This is crazy, please, Eleanor said. Let me explain why this matters. Why it matters? Maya's voice rose. You lied to me. You made me think you were someone who needed help, and I actually worried about you. I've been worried about you for 2 weeks. Eleanor's face softened. And that's exactly why you're here. Maya, in 2 years of doing this, do you know how many people stopped to help me? Really help. Not just drop a quarter in a cup or buy me a sandwich to ease their conscience. Maya waited, her anger still simmering. 7, Eleanor said quietly. 7 people across 12 different cities. And of those 7, you were the only one who gave something you clearly couldn't afford to lose. You gave me your family's only spare blanket on a night when the temperature was below freezing. So what? Maya shot back. That doesn't give you the right to trick people. You're absolutely right, Eleanor agreed. And I'm not asking you to approve of my methods. I'm asking you to understand why I had to know who you really are before. I could offer you something far more significant than $50,000. Maya stared at her. What are you talking about? Eleanor returned to her desk and withdrew a leather portfolio. The grant was just the beginning, Maya. I want to offer you a job. Director of Community Outreach for the Whitfield Foundation. Your responsibility would be to identify individuals and families in need of assistance, and to design programs that provide meaningful, lasting help. You'd start at a salary of $85,000 annually, full benefits, education assistance, and a housing allowance. Maya sank back into her chair. You're offering me a job that pays more in 1 year than I've made in the last 4 years combined? I'm offering you a job where your natural compassion and understanding of real need would make you invaluable. Eleanor corrected. Maya, you know what it means to struggle. You know what kind of help actually makes a difference, and what kind is just band-aids on bullet wounds. I need someone who understands that from the inside, but I don't have a college degree, Maya protested. I don't have any experience with foundations or nonprofits or ... any of this. You have something more valuable than any degree, Eleanor said. You have genuine empathy and the moral courage to act on it, even when it costs you something. Can't be taught. Maya looked around the office, trying to imagine herself working in a place like this. What about Emma, my daughter? There's an excellent daycare facility here in the building for employees' children. Emma would have access to after-school programs, tutoring, and enrichment activities. And Maya, with your new salary, you could afford to move to a neighborhood with better schools. Well, the offer was overwhelming. Maya thought about Emma, about the opportunities this could provide for her daughter's future. Then she thought about the diner, about Rosie and Charlie, and the customers who'd become like family over the years. I need time to think about this, Maya said. Of course, Eleanor stood. Take all the time you need. But Maya, I want you to know something. That night on the street, when you wrapped that blanket around my shoulders, you did more than keep me warm. You reminded me why I started this foundation in the first place. You reminded me that kindness isn't about having enough to spare. It's about caring enough to share what little you have. As Maya rode the elevator back down to street level, her mind raced with possibilities and fears. Could she really leave behind the only work she'd ever known for a job that seemed too good to be true? Could she trust Eleanor after the deception? But as the elevator reached the ground floor and she stepped back into the Detroit afternoon, one thought rose above all the others. For the first time in Emma's life, Maya had the chance to say yes. Instead of maybe someday to her daughter's dreams, the question was whether she was brave enough to take it. 6 months later, Maya stood at the window of her new office on the 23rd floor of the Whitfield Foundation building. Watching the Detroit River flow toward Lake Erie, the view still took her breath away, especially in the early morning. Light, when the city seemed full of possibilities, her office was modest compared to Eleanor's executive suite. But to Maya, it felt like a palace. She had her own desk, a bookshelf filled with resources on community development and nonprofit management, and walls decorated with photos from the Foundation's projects, including several she'd initiated herself. Knock, knock, came Eleanor's voice from the doorway. Do you have a minute? Maya turned with a smile. The relationship had evolved from the awkward tension of those first weeks into something resembling a mentorship. Eleanor had been patient with Maya's learning curve, understanding when she made mistakes and encouraging when she doubted herself. Always, Maya said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. What's on your mind? Eleanor sat down and opened the tablet she carried everywhere. I wanted to review your proposal for the Detroit Winter Shelter Program before I present it to the board next week. Maya felt a familiar flutter of nervousness. This was her biggest project yet, a comprehensive program to not only provide emergency shelter during Detroit's harsh winters, but also to offer job training, mental health services, and transitional housing to help people get back on their feet permanently. The numbers look solid, Eleanor continued, scrolling through. Partnering with local churches and community centers for additional shelter space is brilliant. It leverages existing infrastructure while building community connections. I learned that from experience, Maya said quietly. When Emma and I stayed at the shelter a few years ago, the thing that made the biggest difference wasn't just having a warm place to sleep. It was the volunteers who knew our names, who asked about Emma's school day, who made us feel like people instead of problems to be solved. Eleanor nodded. That's exactly why this program will work. You're not designing it from an ivory tower. You're designing it from the heart of the community. It's meant to serve. Maya pulled up another document on her computer. I also wanted to show you the preliminary results from the micro-grant program we launched last month. The micro-grant initiative had been Maya's idea. Small grants of $500 to $2,000 to help people overcome immediate obstacles that prevented them from achieving stability. Car repairs, so someone could get to work. Security deposits for apartments, or clothes for job interviews, or childcare so a parent could attend job training. We've distributed 37 grants so far, Maya explained. 28 recipients have achieved their stated goals. Sarah Martinez was able to keep her job at the hospital because we helped repair her car. Marcus Johnson started his landscaping business with the grant money for equipment, and Maria Santos enrolled in the nursing program at the community college. After we helped with childcare for her 2 kids, these are exactly the kinds of stories that demonstrate why this approach works, Eleanor said, making notes on her tablet. Individual grants are small enough to be manageable for our budget, but significant enough to create real change in people's lives. Maya leaned back in her chair. 6 months ago, I would never have imagined myself sitting in an office, talking about leveraging community partnerships and scalable intervention strategies. Eleanor laughed. The vocabulary comes with practice, but the instincts those you brought with you. There was a soft knock on the door, and Sarah, Eleanor's assistant, peeked in. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Maya, Emma's school just called. She's not feeling well. Maya immediately stood up, reaching for her purse. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I need to go pick her up. Of course, Eleanor said. Is she okay? Just a stomach bug, I think. But the school nurse wants her to go home. Maya paused at the door. We can finish this later? Maya, Eleanor said gently. One of the benefits of working here is that being a good mother is part of being a good employee, not an obstacle to it. Take care of Emma. The proposal will be here when you get back. As Maya drove through Detroit's streets toward Emma's school, she reflected on how dramatically their lives had changed. They now lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Emma was thriving academically and had made friends with children whose parents didn't have to choose between heat and groceries. Maya was enrolled in evening classes toward a nonprofit management degree, the foundation covering her tuition. But the biggest change was less tangible: the absence of constant fear. For the first time since Emma was born, Maya wasn't lying. Awake at night wondering how they'd pay rent or whether they'd have enough food for the week, The security of a steady, well-paying job had lifted a weight from her shoulders she hadn't even realized she was carrying. Emma was waiting in the nurse's office, looking pale but managing a weak smile when she saw her mother. "Hey, sweetheart," Maya said, feeling Emma's forehead. "How are you feeling?" "My tummy hurts," Emma said, leaning into Maya's side. "But I don't want to miss the field trip tomorrow." Maya smiled. Emma's second-grade class was visiting the Detroit Institute of Arts, a trip that would have been impossible to afford at their old school, but was included in the tuition at Emma's current school. "Let's get you home and see how you feel after some rest," Maya said. As they drove home, Emma asked, "Mama, do you like your new job?" At her daughter in the rearview mirror. "I love it, baby. Why do you ask?" "You seem happier," Emma said simply. "And you don't look worried all the time anymore." The observation hit Maya with unexpected force. Children saw so much more than adults gave them credit for. "You know what makes me happiest about my job?" Maya asked. "What?" "We get to help people. The way someone helped us. Remember when we moved to our new apartment, and I told you that a kind person made it possible?" Emma nodded. "Well, now I get to be the person who helps other families find new apartments, or helps moms go back to school, or helps kids have better opportunities." "Like you helped that lady with the blanket?" Emma asked. Maya smiled. She told Emma a simplified version of how she'd met Eleanor, but her daughter had grasped the essential truth. "Exactly like that," Maya said. That evening, after Emma was feeling better and they'd shared dinner and homework time, Maya sat at her kitchen table, with her laptop reviewing the winter shelter proposal one more time. As she worked, she thought about the chain reaction that had started with a simple decision to give a stranger her family's only spare blanket. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Eleanor. "Just wanted you to know the board approved emergency funding for the winter shelter program. We start implementation next week. Thank you for everything you do." Maya stared at the message, feeling a familiar sense of wonder at how dramatically her life had changed. Tomorrow she would begin coordinating with churches and community centers to set up additional shelter space. Next week she would train volunteers and interview candidates for the support staff positions. Next month, when Detroit's winter winds started to bite, there would be warm, safe places for people who needed them. She thought about all the people who would be helped by the program. People who might be in the same desperate situation she and Emma had faced not so long ago. The circle of kindness that had started with her grandmother's wisdom about compassion was continuing to expand, touching lives in ways she was only beginning to understand. As she prepared for bed, Maya checked on Emma, who was sleeping peacefully in her own room, a luxury they'd never had before. She adjusted her daughter's blanket, a soft, warm quilt they'd been able to afford with Maya's first paycheck from the foundation. Standing in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep in safety and comfort, Maya whispered a quiet thank you to the universe, to Eleanor, and to her grandmother, whose words about kindness had guided her to make the decision that changed everything. Sometimes, Maya had learned, the smallest acts of compassion created the biggest changes. And sometimes, giving away the only blanket you had was exactly what you needed to do to find your way home.